My husband's old friend joined us for dinner. You won't believe what unfolded. Please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments section, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. It was a Thursday evening, the sort of tranquil spring night where the air carries a delicate fragrance of lilacs and freshly mown grass, and time appears to pause just long enough for you to take a deep breath. In the kitchen, clad in my apron, I hummed gently to a tune drifting from the radio while stirring a pot filled with my husband's beloved stew. Nothing particularly unusual, merely an ordinary evening meal at home in our snug, somewhat worn abode nestled in the suburbs. In the living room, my husband, Robert, was engrossed in the game, his voice fluctuating with the tides of frustration and delight, a reflection of the team's performance. It was one of those easy days shared between us, the sort that slips by unnoticed, yet leaves a lingering absence when it fades away. At that moment, the doorbell chimed. I cleaned my hands on the apron and cast a fleeting look at Robert. Did you anticipate the arrival of another? He scowled, silencing the television. Indeed, I was not. As I approached the front door, a sense of curiosity washed over me. I turned the handle and swung it open, revealing a tall man in his early 60s, his expression marked by a sheepish smile. He donned a weathered leather jacket, a bottle of red wine cradled in one hand while a small duffel bag swung from the other. Though his hair had turned predominantly gray, a spark of youthful mischief lingered in his expression. "Greetings, Rob," he remarked with a friendly smile. "It has been quite a while." As he approached, a spark of recognition ignited on Robert's face. "Absolutely not, Richard. Richard Stanton." With a soft chuckle, he stepped forward, embracing her in a warm hug. Richard was an old college friend of Robert's, serving as his best man at our wedding, in fact. It had been over 2 decades since our paths last crossed. The last I knew, he had relocated to Oregon, embarked on a new business venture, experienced a divorce, and then seemingly faded from our lives. Robert gave him a hearty clap on the back, a gesture brimming with that familiar sense of camaraderie. "What brings you here, my friend?" Richard offered a casual shrug, a smile playing on his lips. As I found myself in the vicinity, I thought it would be a good idea to drop in. I'm aware that this comes as a surprise. I trust this request isn't too burdensome. Not in the slightest, I replied, presenting a warm smile. You've arrived just in time for dinner. I ended up preparing more than necessary, after all. Richard entered, absorbing the house as if it were a long-forgotten memory waiting to be unearthed after years of neglect. Yet, beneath the veneer of humor and charm, there lingered a quiet weight to his being. A weariness hung in his gaze. I haven't inquired, not at this moment. We gathered around the weathered oak dining table, the three of us engaged in conversation and laughter as if no time had slipped away. Richard recounted outrageous tales from our college years, some familiar, others new to my ears, as we all savored our wine, feeling as though we had returned to our 30s once more. Yet, I observed a distinct change. Richard observed me more than I anticipated, not in an inappropriate manner, but with a certain softness, a hint of curiosity in his gaze. Initially, I attributed it to a sense of nostalgia. Our rapport had always been strong, even in those earlier days. Yet there was something in his gaze that lingered, a sensation that made me feel truly seen, as if he wasn't merely recalling the woman I once was, but rather recognizing the person I had become. After dinner had concluded, Robert took his leave to engage in an extended phone conversation with one of his brothers. Richard and I found ourselves in the living room, where the soft glow of the lamp stretched shadows across the polished hardwood floor. I filled our glasses once more with the rich, velvety wine. "You know," Richard remarked, swirling his glass gently, "you haven't changed much." I chuckled gently. "Your vision requires an examination. Each morning, the mirror reveals a different truth to me." "I don't mean your face," he remarked. "I refer to your presence. The light within you still shines bright." His voice carried a gentle sincerity. I found myself at a loss for words. Heat surged within me, not from the wine, but from the way he articulated those words, raw, candid, and strikingly open. "I'm pleased you stopped by," I finally remarked. "A considerable stretch of time has passed. Indeed, it feels rather prolonged." There was a pause, the sort that typically breeds discomfort, yet with Richard, it simply felt rich and complete. An unspoken tension lingered in the air between us, poised and expectant. "I needed this," he remarked after a brief pause. To be honest, my presence in the area was no mere coincidence. This was meticulously orchestrated by me. Lately, I've found myself adrift, and I wondered if returning to something familiar might provide some solace. I studied him intently in that moment. The fatigue in his gaze transcended mere travel. It was existence, the sort of erosion that seeps into your spirit after enduring more than your share of tempests. "You are always welcome here, Richard," I said softly. He gazed at me, his eyes becoming even more tender. "My sincere gratitude to you. It holds a significance beyond your understanding." At that moment, Robert re-entered the room, and the fleeting instant slipped away. Yet a change had occurred. I sensed it deeply, a delicate undercurrent flowing through all things, and I remained blissfully unaware of its destination. Yet I was aware of this. On that night, an unspoken beginning took shape. Not an affair, not a betrayal, but rather a profoundly human experience, a reconnection that serves as a mirror reflecting aspects of myself I had long overlooked. As I settled into bed that night, nestled beside my husband, who was already lost in slumber, my thoughts drifted to Richard's eyes, pondering what it was he truly perceived in me. Silence enveloped the morning, a stillness that spoke volumes. Robert departed at dawn to assist his cousin with a roofing project, leaving Richard and me in solitude within the house. It wasn't part of my design. To be honest, it hadn't crossed my mind at all when Robert brought it up the previous evening. As I stepped into the kitchen, the sight of Richard at the table, nursing a cup of coffee in that same wrinkled shirt from yesterday, took me by surprise. "Morning," he said, his gaze lifting to meet mine, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "Morning," I replied, wrapping my robe more snugly around me. "Did you sleep well?" He nodded, "Superior to what I've experienced in weeks." "Your couch is surprisingly comfortable," I said with a light laugh. "That couch possesses enchanting abilities. It has saved more than a few souls in search of solace." A moment of stillness enveloped us as I filled my cup with coffee. The silence of the house struck me then, no television, no Robert, only the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the soft clink of ceramic mugs. Richard peered through the window. "It remains as serene as I recall. It feels as though nothing has shifted, yet everything has transformed." I took a sip. That's how life feels in one's 50s. Both familiar and strange in equal measure. He turned his gaze toward me, the same quiet intensity lingering in his eyes. "Have you ever pondered the journey that led us to this moment? The paths we chose, or perhaps those we avoided?" I rested against the counter. "Occasionally. However, moderation is key. That road can become quite burdensome." Richard nodded slowly, as if he comprehended all too well. After breakfast, we decided to take a stroll. In a moment of necessity, I found myself needing to make a trip to the market, and Richard graciously offered to accompany me. The sun shone brightly yet softly, weaving its way through the trees, casting a late morning warmth that whispered of the approaching summer. We meandered along the extended route through the park, gliding past the tranquil pond and the venerable oak trees. It was serene, almost too serene for idle chatter. "I nearly picked up the phone to call you once," Richard remarked as we settled onto a bench. "It was years ago, right after my divorce." I picked up the phone and dialed the number, yet in a moment of hesitation, I chose to hang up. "Why didn't you call?" I inquired, a sense of genuine curiosity coloring my tone. He merely shrugged. "I suppose I wasn't quite sure what I was seeking, and I didn't want to complicate things." Complicated. I glanced over at him. "Richard, I'm not someone you need to shield from your chaos. We all carry our own burdens." He let out a soft chuckle. "I understand. You have always been a guiding light in my life. Even in our youth, you radiated a warmth, a kindness that was unmistakable. It stirred something within me, a yearning to become a more refined version of myself. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke, and it took me by surprise. I found myself at a loss for words. A part of me longed to offer him solace, much like one would to a dear friend navigating a difficult moment. Yet, a different part of me, one that had lain dormant for years, yearned to embrace the connection blossoming between us. I extended my hand and brushed against his, if only for a fleeting moment. It was a reflex, not a deliberate choice. Yet, he regarded me as if that simple act held profound significance. "Richard," I spoke softly, "you need not bear this burden by yourself." He met my eyes for a fleeting moment. "Neither do you." That lingered in my mind. We strolled home in quietude, our fingers grazing occasionally, yet the unspoken lingered between us. Upon reaching the house, I prepared lunch, and we donned the familiar masks of laughter and storytelling, sidestepping the weight of the morning's encounter. When Robert arrived later that day, Richard effortlessly transitioned back into his old buddy persona. He was boisterous, humorous, tossing out quips about the football team and teasing Robert about his receding hairline. It felt effortless once more. On the surface, yet beneath that veneer, a change had occurred. After Richard had settled into bed, I returned to the couch, where I had placed an extra pillow for him. There, at the sink, I found myself washing the final dishes of the night. Robert had already succumbed to slumber, weary from the day's toils. The window above the sink stood ajar, inviting the refreshing night air inside. I savored the gentle caress of the breeze against my skin and allowed my eyes to flutter shut for a fleeting moment. All that occupied my mind was the way Richard had gazed at me, not as a figure from his past, but as someone he still yearned to comprehend. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even romance. Yet it was something more, authentic, evocative, surprising. It stirred within me a curiosity about all the emotions I had let slip away over time. The following day bore a weight, as if the very atmosphere of the house had thickened with unspoken words. Richard lingered for breakfast once more. He exhibited his usual politeness, helpfulness, and charm. Yet, beneath the surface, there lingered a quietness within him, a palpable distance. It was as if he was making a conscious effort to conceal something. I understood perfectly what it was, for I was engaged in the same struggle. Robert had a golf game scheduled with his friend Steve and departed immediately after breakfast. He pressed his lips to my cheek and gave a wave to Richard, assuring us he would return by dinner. In an instant, we found ourselves alone once more. Richard kindly offered to assist me with the cleanup. In the kitchen, we navigated around one another with a hushed familiarity, filling the dishwasher, wiping down the counters, all the while feigning ignorance of the tension simmering just out of sight. "I should probably head out today," he finally remarked, his hands drying slowly. "I've already imposed long enough." I turned to face him. "You're not imposing, Richard." He offered a half-smile, yet it failed to illuminate his eyes. Yet I hesitate to linger too long. I propped myself against the counter, observing him intently for a prolonged moment. "Are you departing out of desire, or is it fear that compels you to leave?" That brought him to a halt. He locked eyes with me, and for an instant, the world felt stripped bare, vulnerable, sincere, and laid open. "I don't want to cause trouble," he finally admitted. "You haven't," I replied. "Not yet." He chuckled gently. That "yet" conveys it all. I ought to have turned away. I ought to have shifted the conversation, allowed it to fade. Yet a voice within me, one I hadn't heeded in ages, relentlessly urged me onward. "You're not alone in your feelings." I spoke softly, a sense of confusion enveloping me. "I find myself uncertain about what this is or what it signifies. Yet I sense it as well." He moved nearer, deliberately, as if anticipating my command to halt. I remained silent. "I can't help but ponder how differently life might have unfolded," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "If only circumstances had shifted, if I had spoken up long ago." "And what would you have said?" I inquired. He hesitated, then softly confessed that I always harbored feelings for you, even when it was inappropriate. The words settled heavily, akin to a pebble cast into a tranquil pond. An eerie silence enveloped the room. The sole sound was the rhythmic ticking of the aged wall clock, each second resonating like a heartbeat. Then he extended his hand. His fingers grazed against mine. It was merely a fleeting contact, nothing more. Yet, I remained. I allowed it to unfold. I allowed it to linger between us, a silent question we both feared to voice. "I don't want to hurt Robert," I confessed, my voice quivering just a touch. "Neither do I," he replied. We lingered in that moment, suspended between right and wrong, past and present, memory and desire. Yet, we chose not to venture further. We didn't cross the line. Instead, Richard withdrew. "You're a good woman," he said, his voice strained. "More than I feel I deserve to be close to at this moment." He took his coat, draping it over his shoulder. "I'll pack up," he said, his gaze avoiding mine. "I will have departed before Robert arrives." I did not intervene. I merely remained still, heart racing, eyes watering, contemplating how something could evoke such fullness and yet such emptiness simultaneously. An hour later, the front door closed softly behind him. Just like that, Richard had vanished. Robert returned home later, whistling as he placed his golf bag by the door. "Did Richard leave?" I nodded, my back still turned as I stirred the stew. "Yeah, he mentioned he had to hit the road." He left a note. Robert approached and pressed a gentle kiss to my temple, his arm wrapping around my waist. "He's a good man. Always has been." I mustered a smile and leaned closer to him. "Yeah," I murmured softly. "He truly is." Yet in the stillness that ensued, I sensed a profound change within me. Neither guilt nor regret lingered. A sudden, powerful realization washed over me. I had neglected fragments of my own being. I had forgotten the sensation of truly being seen. The warmth of understanding eluded me, to sense a flicker within that transcended the mundane and the obligatory, yet embodied a profound connection. And I found myself at a loss, uncertain of how to navigate that feeling. Not yet. Weeks drifted by. Richard remained silent. No calls, no letters, nor did I extend a hand. Existence resumed its familiar cadence. Tranquil mornings over breakfast, the evening news with Robert, conversations with the children, the gentle task of folding laundry, nurturing the plants with water. The sort of mundane that offers a sense of solace from the surface, yet reveals an unsettling emptiness when one tunes in too intently to their inner musings. Yet a shift had occurred. Not within the confines of my marriage. Robert remained unchanged, reliable, gentle, and compassionate. A man who had shared decades of companionship, crafted a life alongside me from the ground up, and navigated our toughest times with dignity. I loved him. That was never in doubt. Yet, the experience of love and the sensation of truly living alongside someone didn't always align. It was a truth I had long kept buried, only to resurface when Richard re-entered our lives for that fleeting moment. He made no attempt to seduce me. He simply didn't try. He simply looked at me, truly looked, and brought back a part of myself I hadn't realized I had lost. That moment lingered in my mind. One evening, roughly a month after Richard had gone, I found myself alone on the back porch, cocooned in a sweater, cradling a warm cup of tea. The garden lay in serene stillness, the moon draping gentle shadows over the verdant grass. Inside, Robert immersed himself in a documentary, while the windows behind me radiated long, inviting rectangles of warm yellow light. As I reflected on that moment in the kitchen, I could feel the quiet tension enveloping the space, a palpable electricity crackling in the air. The way Richard uttered my name carried a weight, a significance that transcended mere attraction. It was rooted in acknowledgement. That moment revealed a reflection I hadn't realized I sought. In that image, I beheld a woman still capable of yearning. For being stirred, I felt no shame. Instead, I embraced my humanity. Later that night, as I nestled into bed beside Robert, I gazed at him. He was already surrendering to sleep, his features softened by the passage of time and the comfort of our shared moments. "Hey," I whispered. He stirred. "I've been thinking," I said. "I want us to go somewhere, just the two of us. Perhaps by the coast. Or maybe we'll venture up to the mountains." He slowly blinked, his eyes open, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. "Really?" he asked. I nodded in affirmation. "Yeah," I replied. It occurs to me that we require a change. A fresh start." He extended his hand, fingers warm and familiar as they enveloped mine. "I'd like that," he murmured. We chose not to speak of Richard. I never revealed to Robert just how near we were to crossing a threshold, and perhaps I never shall. For that moment transcended the realm of infidelity. It was a journey of rediscovery. That moment of rediscovery brought me back to my essence and to this marriage in a way I had not anticipated. The following morning, I stumbled upon the small note Richard had left behind, a note I had overlooked when he departed. Uncertainty lingered in my mind. Perhaps it was fear of the revelations it held. There it remained, nestled in the side drawer of the hall table, wedged between a forgotten pile of receipts and a solitary spare key. It said, "Thank you for bringing to mind the person I once was and the one I may still become. Cherish your beautiful life. Richard." I clutched the note for what felt like an eternity, my fingertips gliding over its edges. Then, almost instinctively, a smile crept onto my face. In those fleeting days, I had discovered something profound. Neither a man nor a romance, but rather a fragment of my being that I had overlooked for far too long. In rediscovering it, I found my way back to my own existence with gentler eyes and a more expansive heart. Perhaps we are granted only a handful of those moments throughout our lives, those that awaken us, that alter our perception of the world. They come softly, resembling an old friend standing at your door, leaving behind more than they ever took. Richard had been one of those moments in my life, and now it was up to me to carry the rest forward.